Welcome back, or welcome to the Pellinworth Taylor and Martin Steve show, Capitals Uncovered. We've got a friend who's been away from us for a while, a previous regular guest. He's had some issues, and now he's back in full effect to talk to us about the war in Iran, which I think had started by the last time you were on. Don, great to see you again. You're looking great, and welcome back to the show.
Great
Right
to be with
on.
you guys.
From
Same here,
your
man.
various positions, and I don't, let's not get personal, but you've had some recovery issues, and but now you're much better. But you've had ample time to think about the world and world affairs from where the place where you've been, as it were. What reflections would you like to make on the Iran war? Because a lot of people, I think that you were more right than wrong. I mean, we had a lot of guests. We had a kind of Iran war 2 or 3 weeks running in March when the war conflict had just started, and you said this is not going to go on for much longer. Some people predict it'll
Yes.
go on forever, but actually it does seem to be winding up the whole conflict. So I would say that you were right, and you. Some people said they're going to be boots on the ground, Karg Island, and all that kind of stuff. Nope, you said nope, nope, nope. So hats off, chapeau to you.
Here,
Thank you.
here.
What's your assessment of what you got right and what did you get anything wrong and what's happening next in Iran?
What I missed completely was, which was a brilliant move, was the blockade on Iran. Uh, I didn't expect that, but now I understand why they did it, the U.S. and Israel. And I didn't expect Israel to go to this extreme they had with Hezbollah, kind of blowing the memorandum of understanding out. Uh, but what I really want to get to is how many people got this thing totally wrong, and I think I have a good track record to say that. There's so many keyboard warriors and strategists out there, and a lot of blogcasters. It's almost well, it isn't awesome. Well, it is. If Trump does, he's wrong if he does, and he's right if he does not. So I mean, it's a horrible thing. I think he's handling it well, and I think he's got the right people in charge of it. But the boots on the ground is a political minefield. And in a country of 93 million, with a city as large as Tehran, there's no guarantee. I mean, it doesn't take much for a fourth generation force to rise up and just start taking pot shots and suicide bombers and everything we experienced in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, and then I had an argument in the VFW with some great guys I sit with. They said you can't win this war without boots on the ground. You got to remove the current horrible regime. I despise that regime, how evil they are, but the people of Iran have to do it without our help.
Yes.
Uh, and not only that, they try to rise up in January, and we have estimates between 30 and 40,000 people were murdered. So that could be a deal too, that they're kind of waiting for just the right moment. There has been, I watch a lot of Tusi TV with the Iranian guy that lives here, but he's got family still there, so he's got good contacts. He was reporting about a week ago there was some fighting in smaller cities in Tehran and a little bit of uprising here and there. That the army here's the facts: the bombing destroyed the Iranian military. About 90% of it. There's still some speedboats and missiles that are being fired without permission. Frank, get out of here, buddy. Get out. Sorry about that. He has to snort, and you'll hear it in the background. Frank, come on, buddy. Stop for a minute. Let me get him out. Come on, guys. Good boy. Come
I
on.
really empathize with that. We have dog issues too, as you know, Pele.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great dog, but he's a Boston Terrier, so he snorts a lot. And he was on background on one of my podcasts, and some guy said, "You got a monster in there? What's going on?" He's a great dog rescue. We've had him 4 years. So here's what makes this different from Iraq or anywhere else is the Iraqi military and the Republican Guard, not the Republican Guard, but the RFCJ or whatever it's called, are destroyed. They have a government, but there's more than two cells. I think there's multiple cells that respond to stuff, give orders for missiles to be fired, what they have left, and none of them is in harmony. Then they have a government
Oh.
located somewhere in Pakistan that continues to send propaganda out, but that's not an effective force. Uh, on top of that, they have severe water shortages right now. I don't know if you guys know about that. They horribly mismanaged their water since the revolution, uh, using most of it for agriculture because they wanted to be independent, which is a worthy food independent, which is a worthy goal. But and then they just destroyed the old method, which was an ancient method to get the water,
Uh,
and replaced it with systems, dams, and new canals and stuff that are failing, hardly filled up. And so they're in a severe water shortage. I had a friend that I've been with for a long time. So how do you feel about what Trump's doing about getting away their water? That's inhumane. And I had to send him the links to these articles, and it was a podcaster that reported. I found validated it. So they're out of water. Their electricity is almost low. Their inflation is incredible high. Their money's worthless. They can't pay their own soldiers and policemen. A lot of them have deserted and gone to different countries across the border. And of course, like I said, they have no military, and their revenues, while the memorandum of understanding allows them back some revenues, we have such good intelligence. We know everything that's going on there. So they're in bad shape right now. They're great at propaganda because so many presidents in the past believed it. And mainstream media is basically because they hate Trump so much, wanting them to win. It comes down to that, just because they hate Trump so much. So there's tons of propaganda. There's pro-Iranian from our side going out there. And I have lots of contacts, and I see a different picture, plus my experience, that the way they're handling the campaign now, because here is the total battlefield analogy, how I see it. Trump has a big, big thing coming up. He's switching from the battlefield in Iran, and he's got the Arab states behind him for the first time ever. So he's put it on them to be responsible for these actions. And so what's the next big thing Trump's got to deal with? The midterms. Okay, our congressional and Senate elections and governor elections in November. Now, Trump's plan is he's got the people that can continue to run the war, and he's focused right now on domestic issues because that's what the American people want. And he still has a vast majority of Republicans that are behind the war, but they want him to start focusing on domestic issues, lower gas prices, which will lower the price of everything else, and then some other social issues that we've been dealing with. So I don't see this war as a failure. I see it as a great success that's it's adopted to the way war is. Because think about this: if we went in there and destroyed everything, you would get immediate media attention on bodies being dragged from rubble, children being dragged because they're. If we destroyed everything, people basically in the streets starving because they had no electricity, even though the electricity right now is cut back, but that's more with the Iranian government. And then we'll probably get blamed for the water shortage, even though it's scientific data that they destroyed their own water. They just don't have enough, and they don't have enough salt plants along the Gulf to provide for 93 million people. So, in my opinion, the war's gone well. Trump kept troops out of the ground. He didn't validate the fact that air power can now win a war, but with our technology, we can control everything else. And we've scattered their government. They have no strong central government. And now he's dealing with because if he loses the midterms, he's a worthless president for the next 2 years. And the Democrats have become so far left that they're going to do everything to just they're already trying to disrupt it. That's their only strategy because they have no policies that anybody likes unless they're brainwashed.
Mm.
So he's got to focus on that, and because he's the only one to get it. Unfortunately, our Republican Party's pretty weak,
Mm.
and there's a few strong guys in there that take after Trump, but and they'll do well to support. And the other thing is, the Republican National Committee is blooming with money, whereas the DNC is broke. The Democratic National Committee is broke. Now they have some billionaires that back them because they live in isolation from the realities of the world. But my opinion is around August or September, you're going to see a dramatic drop in prices, and you're also going to see several major indictments and charges against corruption. Trump's the only guy in 50 years that's dealt with the corruption here, and it's bad.
Mm.
I mean, it's worth maybe even $1 trillion from Minnesota all across the country. And now they're investigating Governor Gavin Newsom in California for all his corruption. And the big thing from several sources is he's going to be convicted of this, him and his wife. So
wow.
yeah, from all the sources I have, which are pretty solid, he's going to be they've got so much on him that they're going to convict him. They'll probably get him by August. Like I said, Trump wants everything to happen right before the midterms.
Hmm.
So that's what I've got. I'm leaving it open to you
What?
guys.
Well, what if you were? What would the Iranian strategy be to? I mean, presumably they want to get rid of Trump. Can
Yeah.
they? How would they game the situation? I mean, if they wanted to win this, what would they be doing? And presumably, I mean, obviously the Americans would be trying to counter that.
Well, the worst thing they can do is what they've been doing, firing missiles at Gulf states. Because all they do is the Gulf states would prefer to stay neutral, but Trump's got them all signing the Abraham or starting to sign the Abraham, and he's got a coalition of Arab states that side with Israel. And that if they didn't fire at, I'm talking about a lot of missiles and drones at these Gulf states. So their strategy is larger propaganda right now because they can't do anything to our forces because of the technology and the manpower and woman power has rised up because they're motivated by Trump and Hegseth. So they're doing a good job. The DEI has largely been taken out of the military, not all of it, but there's some that remain. But they cleansed a lot of people out that shouldn't have been there, or they didn't appoint or pick people to lead these forces that they thought were picked based on anything but merit. So I think Chief Chairman of the Chief of Staff, General Kane, is an incredible chief. I like his style. I like his personality. He's very knowledgeable, self-made man. So, and that's what Trump largely goes after when he's picking people, military or for a cabinet or whatever, is self-made people that are successful, not government people. He learned that from his first term. So, going to that answer, the Iranians are going to try to use propaganda and continue to aim the propaganda at the far left of the Democratic Party. And that's even though it's stronger within the Democratic Party, their message is weaker in the states because people have had enough of it.
But
So
presumably, it's in their interest to get Trump impeached.
yeah, no, not even really impeach. They just have to get help the House regain the Congress, and they would like the Senate, but I think we're going to get both houses because we've done redistricting here, and for the first time in the president's term. And here's the other mistake people make on analysts. This is not Trump's first term. This is his second term. And historically, people in the second term, first industrial way, do better in the midterms than the first term. This is his second term. A lot more people know him. Everybody knows him. And the other thing is the World Cup has helped us a lot
Yeah.
with opinions in Europe because Europeans came over here expecting what they've been told by their media, the BBC, all
Yes.
the other media, and they're saying, "Man, this place is great. I mean, people are great. I mean, it's just the amount of YouTube videos are overwhelming. My wife and I sit and watch them every day. She loves the Scottish ones because they are very funny. But people are realizing America, though it's a superpower, the people there are great. They're not like we've been told by so that helps our situation as well. But the only card that the Iranians have right now is the propaganda and convincing more than enough Democrats that this war is worthless and there is no nuclear threat, which I agree with that totally. There is a nuclear threat. And eventually Iran would have if they even had one nuclear missile. I had another guy tell me, well, they're going to do like we did with the Soviet Union, where you have mutual destruction, meaning the doctrine, we won't fire at you because if you fire at us, we'll all both be destroyed as well as the world. They don't care about that. They're willing to die in the extreme version of Sunni Islam they practice. They are willing to die if they get one missile off to London or Tel Aviv or even DC and it hits with a nuclear warhead, or they get it on a cargo van on a ship and get it into somewhere. They don't care about mutual destruction. They'll take down all their people if they could get just one victory where they destroy or kill millions of people. Uh, so so they're looking at from that strategy. They're going to just keep putting out propaganda and trying to slow down the peace talks. But I really believe there's a sect in the Iranian government that wants peace. The so-called moderns. I'm surprised they've not been killed by the IRGC yet. But there seems like to be two messages. No, they're not doing this,
Mm.
and yes, we want this done. And even JD and Marco Rubio, who's been a pleasant surprise how good he's been.
I agree.
And I like JD too, just because he's a self-made man. And he handled all the communist webs. He was on the View and other places. He handled them really well. But those two guys are the main agents. And there's a fourth factor that's very not looked at. Cuba's getting ready to fall, guys. Cuba just put out something that was incredible. They put out something that was read like a capitalist agenda because they're trying to, and Trump's already sent the CIA director down there to deal with them. So they're going to fall pretty soon. They're in really bad. They're not as bad shape as the Iranians, but they're in bad shape. So did that answer your question,
Well,
Alex?
and Don, what are your sources telling you about what's going on in Ukraine? Because
Yeah.
uh, the latest in the scrolling says that Zelensky's been advised by Trump to escalate in Ukraine. And I'm trying to read the Russian media. I don't read Russian, but they're saying that the spirit of anchorage is dead.
Yes.
And our previous sources, John is saying that the Russians are never going to strike back, and but that Putin is the last guy who believes in Trump, and everyone in the military side in Russia is getting ready to escalate. And there's talk in the among Western analysts that there might even be tactical nukes. So the conflict in Ukraine is now escalating. Whereas I thought, well, maybe if there was peace in the Middle East, there would be Putin was at least waiting for the Americans to sort that out and then come and sort out Ukraine. But maybe that's hopelessly naive. What's your take and your contacts' take?
The contacts take they just Ukraine is mastering drone warfare. They just destroyed a major oil processing plant near Moscow, which it can be the fires can, and they just hit Crimea and took out a lot of fuel and all that. So they're targeting logistics, which is right. Uh, don't target the politicians like Putin and all them. Well, that might even end it. If you could take out Putin, I think you might end it. But take out their, I'm not experienced enough to know what the Russian hierarchy's like. Martin's shaking his head, so I would
On
probably agree.
that point, yes.
Yeah. So, but the Ukrainians have masked. And did you guys read a couple of weeks ago they used robots and drones to take a Russian position with no manpower? And the Russians surrendered to the the little robot tanks and stuff. So they did that. I've been wanting to write an article, but I hadn't had time because I'm limited to how much time I'm on the computer every day. Uh, but the logistic targeting is brilliant because as long I just don't take much stake in targeting populations because as we know in Britain they didn't submit the people when they were firing V2s and V1s at them. And then the same with Afghanistan and Iraq. We bombed the crap out of them, and they just moved somewhere else and made them more against us. So I'm a big believer hit the logistics as much as possible. So I think
Does
Ukraine don't. I
do the
just don't
Americans
think
have a strategy for Ukraine, or have they washed their hands of it?
they wash their hands because the Ukrainian. Now I do work with the Ukrainian Center of Leadership, and I get some stuff from them that they can give me, which is unclassified. But they hate their NATO and U.S. advisors because they are so far behind where the Ukrainians are. They want them to fight like a 1985 NATO defense against the Russians type deal. And they have asked a lot of them to leave because they can't instruct them anything valuable. The Ukrainians, I've been surprised. I've been really surprised, have mastered drone and robotic warfare, and they've adopted a lot better than the Russians. The Russians right now are just outproducing them and have a lot more manpower, but the Ukrainians are evolving and adapting to all kinds of new stuff and adapting their forces to it. So the strikes on Crimea, which was all logistics, and the Moscow strike, which was a big oil refinery, are brilliant moves. I I don't think Russia will ever convert to using an attack nuke because they'll have the whole world against them. Right now, everyone's kind of neutral, and there's just no value using an attack nuke. Why they're going to drop it on Kiev and or on the battlefield? No, that make the best thing Putin can ask for right now is just keep what he's got and a DMZ type deal that brings in UN troops or some kind of things that monitor the zone. But everyone speaks about the possible. Now, I think if the Ukrainians use drones against the Kremlin and went after Putin, he probably would use attack nuke. But as long as they're hitting logistics and not population centers and not key leaders, I have a mixed bag about taking out all the key leaders. It's never really worked before.
Mm.
Precisely.
We took out all the top leadership of the Iranians, and even though they're a very big top-down organization, their ideology allows others to take charge because they believe in the ideology. Now they're not experienced and don't have the scope of the higher guys had, but still, it's a mixed bag. You want to believe, and when you take out all those higher level guys, everything collapses. It didn't.
Mm.
Did that? I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, well, what I hear is that the Russians are going to are winning on the battlefield. They're going to take the last two fortress cities in Donbass by the end of this year, and that's what they're focusing on. And then my belief is that they'll probably go for a ceasefire or something along the line of contact, because the one thing they asked for was the rest of Donbass, and you said you can't ask for territory you haven't conquered, and fair enough, as it were. And I think the Russians just go ahead and conquer that, and then leave it at that. That's my instinct.
That not your instincts backed up by a lot of stuff I'm seeing. And
Right.
the reason they're like that is because the Ukrainians now have the ability to hit their logistics, and that's really affecting the Russians.
Mm.
So now they've converted about taking all of Ukraine to just taking what they can of the Donbass and hold it.
Right.
So I
And it's
agree with
interesting you said
that.
about UN troops, because I think a little noticed fact, it's so hard to find out what's really going on. But when the E3, the British and Germans and French, they seem to have dropped some of their demands for NATO troops. And there was a non-specific talk about the troops coming in as tripwires could be from neutral countries. And almost no one has paid attention to that, because the security guarantee with Western forces was the sort of parade, the parade number of the Western powers. Did you see that, Martin?
Yes, I'm rather skeptical about it because, again, I'm of an age, and I remember things that are never commented upon. In 1957, one of the ways Dag Hammarskjöld and Dwight Eisenhower induced the Israelis to withdraw from the Sinai was by setting up UN tripwire forces called UNEF, United Nations, I think, Emergency Force, in the Sinai that would guarantee Israel against any military attack from Egypt, because the widespread assumption, even in Israel in those days, was Egypt was far militarily superior to Israel. The Israeli success in the 56 war was seen as an aberration because they had the British and French with them. Even David Ben Gurion, founding father of Israel, believed that. But in 1967, President Nasser of Egypt called on the UN under Secretary General U Thant to pull the UNEF force out of Sinai. And that tripwire was from exactly the neutral states we're talking about now.
Hmm.
And U Thant yielded immediately. And that did even more damage to the credibility of the UN as a world organization than the murder of Dag Hammarskjöld had done 6 years before. Totally destroyed all credibility for the UN as a guarantor for peace or to help reconcile any conflict, because it was clear from that all UN guarantees were useless, and especially so if the troops came from the neutral countries. They'd just be overrun and ignored by either whatever aggressive side was there in whatever conflict, or in any case, any future UN Secretary General would be as spineless and contemptible and worthless as U Thant was in 67. If U Thant had stuck his ground and stood up to Nasser, the Israelis would not have been so scared for their existential survival to strike at Egypt, because they thought they were fighting for, and they were actually fighting for existential survival. The Egyptian rhetoric at the time was, and military deployments were very clear. The Egyptians were very inept, but the intent was very clear at the time, and this has been written out of history. But now we find a much more dangerous situation, I think, because where I disagree with you, Don, is I don't think these attacks by the Ukrainians on Russian infrastructure are harmless or restrained at all. I think they are all enormously dangerous escalations about a thermonuclear power.
Yeah.
I also emphasize very strongly, and this is a universally held misconception in the West, that Putin is the source of all evil in Russia. If only we could eliminate him, everything would be hanky dory and la di da. Well, did that work? As you said, decapitation has never worked before, didn't work in Iran, but it's even worse in Russia. Because
Yeah.
as another friend of ours we had on the other day, very interesting to have you and he interact with each other because it wouldn't be so much hammer and tongs as, learning from each other or challenging each other's assumptions. But this is John Helmer, who's in Moscow.
Yeah.
And John's assessment is that Putin is the most moderate, and I agree with him, the
I
most
agree.
moderate and restrained of Russian leaders, and that he is isolated politically in Russia for that reason. So, if the Ukrainians or any of their hard ass NATO friends led by the Brits, and we have enough idiots in Washington, exactly as you well know too, were to even attempt anything against President Putin personally, especially God forbid if they succeed, it would not make things better. It would bring on
Even worse.
thermonuclear war. And the one other point I would add on the Russia front, I mean, on Iran, I largely agree with you. And I think you've made hugely important points that nobody here on either the US Israeli or the Iranian side makes. And that is everybody is looking for zero sum solutions in this war, or for zero sum. Exactly. You pointed out something that I had most certainly lost track of, that there are and the great and subtle leaders in history, the great strategists, people like Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman in his day. And much though he may have bat's wings and a dark shadow, Henry Kissinger certainly understood is the most optimum and viable solution is more often than not something in the twilight zone, something between full victory and full defeat, where you accept partial retreat or you accept partial victory. And the worst thing you can do is the Hitler mistake, always going for absolute victory. And I think it's enormously, to President Trump's, as you say, utterly underestimated and ignored qualities and wisdom. And to that, Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio with him. Amen for saying what you did. I think that needed to be said. I fully agree with you that they are going for limited victory because they're taking what they can get, and they're in a position to take more in the future. Yeah, this is not the
I mean,
end
they
of the
took out their
story.
whole military. They took out their abilities to do the things. I mean,
Mm.
Yes,
that's where people miss. I mean, it's not like
exactly.
Mm.
they
And
don't
one
have the
last point on
ability to
this: I think
stretch.
the Israelis miss this completely.
Yep,
I
they
think the
did.
Israelis miss it completely.
Yep.
Well, yeah. I mean, Don? What are your contacts and saying about the Israelis? I mean, do you think that this spat between Netanyahu is it like a good cop, bad cop? Are they bad, Netanyahu
No, they're
and
really
Trump?
Trump, the Israelis for their, and I understand how they feel because they've always been under attack. I respect that.
Mhm.
I don't believe all these apex rumors about they control us. I see so many people talk
I
about
agree.
Israel is a country that if you're living there, you've got to protect yourself, okay? And they want total victory. So Trump sees victory in a modern sense that's not been seen before, ever, where he doesn't need to have a total unconditional surrender to win. He just has to take away their capabilities to do something to others, and he's done that, okay? And their biggest threat, nuclear. And and because he's degraded them 20, 30, 40 years, maybe even 50 years, uh, but the Israelis, because they've been under constant attack, they get paranoid, and I think the rift between Bibi and Donald Trump is real. I think
I
Trump's
agree.
frustrated with them because they don't understand that they don't need a total victory to win this war. They just need to take away the capabilities.
Mm.
And
Gentlemen, we got to wind up there. We're almost at the 40-minute mark. Martin, do you want to say something?
I just say amen to all of that, Don. Please come back ASAP,
yeah,
double ASAP,
yeah,
because you
please.
have time to make up for with us.
I
And
love
it's
you
great to
guys.
see
I
you
really,
better, Don. You're
yeah.
looking great. Thank you so
Let's
much.
schedule something else to talk about the things we talked about. You guys are great. I love you and thank you for having me on.
Pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Thank